Lin-J Dixon hit the practice field on Thursday for practice number 4, and a VFL joins the show. Who is it? Find out all here on a Friday. Locked on Vols.
You are Locked on Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Friday edition of Locked on Vols. And, of course, I'm your host, Eric Kane. And as always, you can find this podcast on Twitter at _Kaner and at Locked on Vols. Your first listen each and every morning. Your first watch on YouTube. Subscribe, rate, review, and follow us on there. Can't thank you enough for supporting the show. Great numbers this week, so really good stuff. And obviously, it's with fall camp beginning, so that's no shock there. I do radio in Knoxville, Tennessee. If you're new to the show at 99.1 The Sports Animal, you'll likely hear me on the morning show between 6 and 9 a.m., the starting lineup. I also write for the rival site covering University of Tennessee. That is volquest.com. And, of course, I'm the host of this show, Locked on Vols. Today, I'm going to tell you what I saw at practice number 4, some practice observation. Lin-J Dixon hit the practice field for the very first time. I've got VFL Ramon Foster joining the show in segment number 2. And then I caught up with Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel to get his thoughts on what's been transpiring at Tennessee football camp so far this week. That is your show, segments 1, 2, and 3. Hey, if you want to do me a favor and you want to help promote this podcast, you got friends, you got family members that, heck, they're probably just as big as Tennessee fans as you are. We are getting into football season. They need to subscribe wherever they find their podcast. If they want to listen on YouTube or watch on YouTube, subscribe there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Odyssey app, wherever. Let everyone know it's football time. If they want a 30 to 35-minute Tennessee football podcast each and every day, you need to tell them where to find it. So, nonetheless, without being said, let's go ahead and get into it. This is your Friday edition of the show. So, fourth practice of the week, second practice with shoulder pads and helmet. The full pads will come on Sunday, and they will scrimmage on Tuesday. Now, Tennessee will have an off day, their first off day of the fall camp. That will be today here on a Friday, but they've got 4 practices in the books. Again, they'll have shells tomorrow, which is shoulder pads and helmets. They will have full pads beginning for the first time on Sunday, and then they will have their scrimmage on Tuesday. Lin-J Dixon, that was the big storyline at practice on Thursday. He hit the practice field for the very first time. Now, remember, I talked about the acclimation period. You got to have 2 days in helmets, 3 days in shells, and then you can be in full pads. So he's a couple of days behind, obviously. I guess it'd be about 3 days behind the rest of the team. So he was just in a helmet today, but very much of a first day of school vibes for him. He was out there. Okay. He committed to Tennessee yesterday. He signed his financial agreement papers earlier this week, and he is here on campus and he is practicing with the football team. But, and watching him didn't quite, whenever you move from drill to drill, you go from this part of the field to that part of the field. I mean, these guys who have been here going through spring practice, been here a couple of years, or really with the staff, or even just been here this week. They kind of know what's going on. A couple of times Lin-J Dixon was going the wrong way, didn't really know where to go. Very much first day of school vibes. But again, that was the biggest hiccup that I saw. And that's not even really a hiccup. That's just kind of new guy in the new place, right? Not many takeaways. I mean, the running backs aren't doing anything strenuous when we're out there, and we're only out there for a couple of minutes. But, just in observing him, I mean, he's 5'10", 195. He, takes the handoff the right way. His steps in the backfield are right. His cutting ability, his agility, the burst. I mean, it's all there, and it's no surprise, right? I mean, he spent 4 years at Clemson, and now he's here at Tennessee. Remember from yesterday's show, he played 3 years and 3 games, then entered the transfer portal. Didn't finish off last year anywhere, committed to West Virginia, went to West Virginia this past semester, and then now he's at Tennessee. He never played in a game at West Virginia. But, I mean, he's a guy that is a Power 5 football player. He has played in some big-time football games, been on some really good teams at Clemson, played for a national championship at one point in time. And so he's experienced. And, we talked about what his value can be to this running back room and just having a body. But the upside is there in terms of being a really a nice, fast, quick, elusive type back. And, Adam Sparks chimes in on this later in the show. But Friday morning, I mean, you can see it, right? I mean, he's got experience. He is a veteran. He is an older guy. And more importantly, he is a body, okay? And that is the most important thing. So the Lin-J Dixon era at the University of Tennessee is off and running, and we'll see how much he can contribute as camp goes on and add to the Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, Justin Williams-Thomas kind of fold there in the running back room. Also on Thursday's practice, I'll go ahead and say in terms of red non-contact jerseys, Christian Charles and Cheyenne Lambruza continue to be in red non-contact jerseys. Jalen Wright is continuing to work off to the side. He is, a bit banged up right now, but nothing too serious from what I've been told. He's getting, work with a trainer. This is a big note right here. So on Monday, Kamal Haddon was out there looking normal. On Tuesday, Kamal Haddon was out there with a big old brace on his elbow. Wednesday, Kamal Haddon was not at practice when the media was present. I mentioned that on the show yesterday, and he very well could have been inside or whatever, but he was not out there when we were out there. And then on Thursday, Kamal Haddon was dressed in shorts and a jersey. He was not practicing. So he is going through some type of injury right now. Now, there was no sling. He was not wearing a sling, kind of holding up his arm or his elbow. There was no elbow brace or anything to that nature, but it is worth noting that he was not practicing. He was off to the side in a jersey, kind of being a spectator. And from what I've been told, it's nothing too serious, but obviously we'll need to keep tracks on that as the days and the weeks progress here in fall camp to see what the situation is there, because I believe if healthy, Kamal Haddon's a starting cornerback for this team. So that is certainly worth tracking for sure. But big points of emphasis at camp on Thursday: open field tackling. Second day in pads in terms of helmets and shoulder pads. So getting the big donut out that rolls, and the secondary guys take proper angles and tackling it. The linebackers hitting the one-man sled and focusing on taking the proper angles for open field tackling. This team really did not do well in open field tackling last year. And so that was obviously a point of emphasis on day 4 of practice on Thursday for the defense. Offensively, I think Bru McCoy continues to look better and better. I think his routes are looking more crisp as the week goes on. He's, taking coaching. You can see him get coached up from Kelsey Pope a little bit between the reps, and he's taking it and applying it. And so he continues to look better and better and better. The slot position, I think Tennessee's got, some really good depth there. I mean, of course, Jalen Hyatt, Squirrel White, as we've mentioned plenty of times, and Jimmy Callaway. I really like the options Tennessee has in the slot. And you hope that the outside options continue to progress as well, with obviously Cedric Tillman on one side, and then Jimmy Holiday, Ramel Keaton, Bru McCoy, Walker Merrill, and then the freshman Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb. So those are some of the observations I had from Thursday. A lot of group work for the offensive line, the centers working with the guards, and the guards working with the tackles, and the defensive line was doing the ladder drills and doing the bag drills and trying not to get under Rodney Garner's skin any more than they usually do. But nonetheless, those were the big time observations I had from practice on Thursday. There's not many, I get it, but it's something, right? But Lin-J Dixon, LJ Dixon, looked pretty good, and he looked like a Power 5 running back in terms of taking the handoff, his steps, his burst, his vision, just kind of going through the drills. You can tell that he's been coached up at Clemson for the last 4 years. So wanted to pass those along in terms of notes that I had from Thursday's practice. Again, today, Friday, it's going to be an off day, and they'll be back out there Saturday and Sunday. Sunday will be the first day of full pads, and scrimmage number 1 of fall camp will be on Tuesday. All right, I'm going to step out of the way. In segment 2, when we come back, we are going to hear from former Vol, VFL, Ramon Foster, host of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville, and he's a little bit everywhere, but of course, he played here at the University of Tennessee and started for the Pittsburgh Steelers for 11 years, I believe. So, going to have Ramon Foster on the show, and then when we break with him, we're going to have Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel come on, another beat reporter covering Tennessee football, and I chat with him for about 7 minutes or so, and I wanted to bring that to the show. So I'll step aside. I'll come back and close us out, but that's what you have to look forward to the rest of the way here on a Friday. But first, I want to tell you about BetOnline.net. It's the fastest and the easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports events from the number one source for all the odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every single league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and golf. That's Live Golf as well as PGA Tour. BetOnline.net continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have got you covered. Head on over to the website today. That is betonline.net, or you can use your mobile device, learn about all the latest trends and all the action that's happening right now today. That's betonline.net. It is where the game starts. VFL Ramon Foster, also in his second career following a 10-plus year stints with the Pittsburgh Steelers over at 104.5 The Zone, co-host of J. Martin Ramon. Ramon, what's going on, man?
Man, not a whole lot of much. Just ready for football season. We're almost here. Pads are officially hitting right now, so I'm good to go, man. Let's go.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, and we've been talking in our industry, ever since the end of the Music City Bowl about the 2022 season and year number 2 for Josh Heupel and all that. From your perspective, what would be a successful? You don't even necessarily have to say 8-4, 9-3, whatever, but
yeah,
what would be a successful season for Tennessee here coming up?
My biggest thing for any coach coming behind since former is, which one of the big three can you get and how often can you get those guys to start honestly chipping away at the block? The big three to me has always been Georgia, Florida, Alabama. Those are the three. Even, when we were a not so good team during my time, we would either get, Florida, maybe we get Georgia. It was always one of those ones. We get Alabama. When was the last time we got that one? It was 2007. So it's like, when can you start chipping away at that rock? The coaches since former have recruited well. They've had good years here or there, but it's never been a consistency of winning those games. And I know the Kentucky game means a whole lot because they were a rated team last year. 7+ wins, I'd almost go 8. Let's go 8 this year. That's success. That's being able to show also the fan base for a second year that this offense can work in the SEC because, that was a part of, one of the biggest questions we all had was how good can this offense be in the SEC and can he prove himself to do that again? I think everybody's excited about Nico and what he could potentially bring, but let's also say, let's look at the quarterback that he also has on roster right now. Is it Taven?
Yeah.
That he has on roster. If Nico's not ready, because that is an adjustment. He brings a whole lot of talent with him, but if there has to be a little bit of a camp battle whenever they decide to come in, not just this year, but the year after is what I'm looking for. I'd say getting Florida, having the ability to get LSU and beating the teams you're supposed to, going on the road and, trying to get a win in Pitt. That to me is the success. I think the Pitt game, I think the Florida game, I think how you battle LSU and what do you look like against the teams like South Carolina, Missouri, Vandy, doing what you're supposed to do. And year 2, that's what I'm looking for.
Ramon, which of the big three do you want to beat the worst? Florida, Georgia, or Alabama as a player? And then now, has it changed at all?
As a player, Bama.
Yeah.
Bama. I'd say during my time playing, we always felt like we could get Georgia. And even recently, it was always those times where, we can get Georgia, and I think Georgia's at that point now is like, hey, they are some trench monsters now. They are a very strong team. Kirby has them in the right direction. Always want Bama. always want Bama, man. And it's funny that Nick Saban is coming out saying that they had a little bit of a rebuild year. Well, hell, I'll take what you did last year if that was a rebuild. But the game I always want is Bama as a fan now, somebody that's watching the game. What I see is realistic and attainable. Florida. Give me Florida. It's the way I'm looking at it. And disrespectfully beat them too. I just want to throw that out there. As a fan, as a VFL that's now covering them, beat them, but also disrespectfully beat them. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, don't make friends in the process, right?
Absolutely not.
You talked about this offense and some of the questions that, and absolutely we were asking ourselves and, just going, making all the rounds is, can this offense be successful in the SEC? Year 1, it certainly was. Broke a ton of school records, averaged 39 points per game. I mean, you were pretty much in every single game, for a while, if you didn't win that game. Year number 2, what will the defenses do in terms of adjusting, in terms of adapting to Tennessee's offense? You and I earlier today when we were doing our hit on your show, that second quarter lull, teams adjusted a little bit. Will there be a second year lull? Will teams adjust? What do you expect in that regard?
Well, they gotta adjust. They have to. But this is the thing about that offense. That offense is built to take advantage of people. If you got a young freshman out there that doesn't know what he's doing, if there's a misassignment, they're gonna find it. So that adjustment we will see. But one thing that Josh Heupel and his staff has really harped on this year, and since he's taken the job, is we got to be able to beat people up. My question is to this offense. The running game was good. You admitted that on our show this morning here in Nashville, but it's also the idea that can you slow it down and beat people up? Can you get those, hey, now we're 2nd and 6 and we get a first down? That's what we're looking for as far as that lull. That's the adjustment that I want to see from him as teams around the league and around college football really start to take notice and say, look, if we don't do this, we're going to get blown out. And I think that's kind of what Kentucky ran into last year when they were clearly, let's be honest, they were probably the better team. We had the most, the better momentum and just the ability to strike when necessary. But that was the determining factor in us winning that game, was finding the weak link of their team. And now moving forward, it has to be winning in the trenches on those 2nd and 6, 3rd and 1s, heck, even 2nd and 7. Like, that's where we're trying to win football games in the SEC.
Obviously, a really, really good standout offensive lineman here at the University of Tennessee and in the National Football League. Let's stay in your wheelhouse here. Tennessee returns 4 of 5 starting offensive linemen. There is a left tackle battle right now, and well, we just heard from Glenn Ellerby yesterday, and he said, I couldn't tell you who's in front right now. They got a scrimmage, and we'll see that on Tuesday. But what do you like about this offensive line? How good can this offensive line be moving forward into this season?
I think they see their importance now. And I love Coach Ellerby. I just got to throw that out there too. His knack for wanting to go get guys, not just guys, but big guys that want to rumble in those trenches, man. For him to make a comment as far as we don't know who it is right now, lets you know just how close and competitive that matchup is going to be. I love the addition or just the, Jerome Carvin coming back this year. I think his leadership skills is probably some of the best I've seen on a team, on the Tennessee team in a while. I love what he's bringing to the table. And if he can get Darnell Wright to kick that next step in, because this is a big year for him, man.
Contract year.
It is. Yeah. We talk about NIL like, no, this is the real contract year for him. And he's got to show, man. I know this for a fact. NFL teams track guys. They find the 5 stars. They find the top 100, 300 guys. And he was one of those dudes. So if he want to make a claim for himself, he needs to do it this year. And also the same goes for Jerome and just the other guys that are on that line. I love Coach Ellerby again. Let me re-stress this, saying that we don't know who the guy is, simply because the battle has to be that good. And whoever wins it in the end is going to be the guy that's the best for it, stay healthy enough for it, and I'm hoping is nasty enough to be at that position, because we know this is a very defensive league still. Mm-hmm. Lane can do what he wants to offensively. Kirby can do what he wants offensively. Heck, every Shane Beamer, he can everybody. But you win in the SEC with a damn good defense, and that's what I'm looking for from this left tackle as far as keeping those rushers off the quarterback.
Let me ask you this, Ramon. Now, at the time of this, whenever this is live on the podcast, it'll be Friday, and Tennessee will have a week worth of practices under their belt. The shoulder pads and helmets will have been on for 2 days at this point. Full pads come on Sunday. How can you win a job before you get into full pads? I know there's hitting. I know they're banging around there, shoulder pads and helmets. You get a lot done, and plus the technique and it's mental and all that. But how can you win a job? And it's not going to happen. But how can you get a leg up in the race before a scrimmage? Maybe kind of looking at this week and JJ Crawford and Gerald Mincey.
I'll take you back to when one of our best years was 2007, and Coach Cutcliffe was huge on the summer training. I'm talking about huge on the summer training. What do you guys look like from the time we leave spring, from the time we get to the start of camp? That's where you win first phase of it. It's how you look going into camp, and Cut was such a magician at getting guys to buy into that type of just team concept. And that's what I will go with those guys, the ones that worked the hardest this summer, the ones that really get gained in the weight room. They shredded if they needed to as far as their body. And then when you get to the field and you're talking about, no pads, no MEs, no mental errors, looking good too, E-Kane. Like, that's the thing about it. You got to look like you know what you're doing and you do it. And just the level of intensity about the job. Those are the things that can get you the starting job before the actual pads come on. Knowing what you're doing what you're supposed to do over the summer, and looking the part too. Look, you can still finish with no pads on. You can still hustle down the field, even as an offensive lineman. That's how you win coaches over, especially at the college level. It's a matter of what amount of work will you put in before we actually get to football, because most of the time, other than technique, the game is just a game. And the ones that are going to be your starters, they know what they are doing. So what did you do before we got to this point about playing ball? Because you heard guys say this all the time. I just want to play ball. Yeah. But what did you do before we got to that point? And that's what those coaches judge you on before the actual starter is named.
Last thing I want to ask you here, and I want you to remove your media cap. I know you cover this team. You can talk about it every single day.
Real quick. All right.
Former Vol, VFL, Ramon Foster, and you've been asked this question, what, 1, 2, 3, 4. This will be the 5th time, I guess, since your playing days. You're number 2, new system, new coach, the direction of the program. How you feeling as a guy that's put blood, sweat, and tears in this program? How you feeling about where Tennessee football is?
I think it's actually at a foundation point. That's where I'm at. I as a player watching these coaches, former player VFL watching these coaches come in, I just always ask, how good would they be? What are they doing recruiting wise, and what are they doing culture? The wins will come if you have a great culture, because that means you get the good players. And that's why I feel like we are right now. I look at the way they recruited last year. I look at the way they played last year. And now I'm looking at this early season of the way they've cultivated this rookie class. I said rookie class, this recruiting class coming in for 23. You knew you needed a quarterback. You went and got one. You know you needed guys up front, so you went and got those offensively and defensively. And you sprinkle in those guys you need that are necessary, those playmakers. I feel like the guys they went and got, as far as recruiting-wise, have been more playmaker. I look at them as Tennessee types, too. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the one thing that always got me. The teams that were really good, you usually have a California guy. You have some Virginia. You get some North Carolina, some South Carolina, some Georgia. You get the state. And that's what Hypo has done. I feel as if the foundation has been set. So as a fan now, as a former VFL, I'm just at a point to where I'm like, okay, this is starting to feel right. And again, I got the same questions as everybody else. What is it going to look like again and again and again? And I'll say this, I feel like the level of commitment from Hypo, as far as him wanting to be there, it seems to be an appreciation aspect of it. And I ride with that. I'm a loyalist type of person. If you ride with me, I ride with you. And I feel that with what Hypo has been presented with, and not just him, the entire staff of Danny White and the way he's brought, VFLs and Vol fans together. We hadn't seen this in over a decade plus, and I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Less than 1 month away until it's officially football time in Tennessee. Ramon, thanks so much, man. Of course, you catch Ramon Foster. I know a lot of you guys listening to this pod and watching us right now probably live in the mid-state area, the Nashville area, 104.5 The Zone, 6 to 10 Central Time each and every morning. And Ramon, there's probably some Steelers fans, man. You do a weekly Steelers show. Kind of tell us what that is and where they can find that as well.
I do the Ramon Foster show. I do it. It's based out of Pittsburgh. We're talking mostly
Ramon
Steelers.
Foster show.
Yeah, I mean, they put my name on it. But you guys know I had one destination. That was Pittsburgh. I love that place the same way I love the Vols, and I covered them Monday through Friday. We usually drop the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, any place you can get podcasts. We're on there. Check us out if you hadn't. I'm usually on there doing this, having a good time, talking sports, and just trying to be a dude like E. Kane.
I mean, it's pretty difficult, but you might get there one day, right?
One day, man. I'm still learning, but they say I'm all right.
Ramon, appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Anytime, E.
Here with Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel. Adam, thanks so much for hanging out with us here today. And Tennessee, nearing the end of week 1 of fall camp. Big takeaways so far when you see this team practice and listen to this team meet with the media.
Well, I think the offense is going to be what the offense was last year. I think even though there are different pieces plugged in, especially at wide receiver, I think it's going to look sort of the same, just different names, different faces. I thought Jalen Hyde has looked pretty good. Obviously, he had a good spring. I like what I've seen from him so far. I'm wondering about left tackle. I mean, I think at this point we're sort of picky about filling holes. You get 4 starters back on the offensive line, you're not supposed to have much of any issues. But there's that one spot, and it's a big spot. I mean, you've got to have a left tackle to protect Hendon Hooker's blind side. I think sort of adding to that, you don't necessarily have a running back that's really good at pass protection. Laneith Whitehead out. Jabari Small is serviceable there, but not really good. Not as good as he should be or could be. And so I think when you combine those two things, I think you could have a hole on pass protection. Again, I think we're being almost picky if we're picking out spots like that on offense. But defensively, it's just my eyes are on the secondary the whole time, because it's one thing to say that there's like 5 or 6 guys fighting for a spot, but there's like 12 is my best count. And, they've got to figure that out. And everything that they lost in spring in terms of the corners being out and those lost reps, they're having to sort of condense that competition in the secondary, figure out what they have, and they don't really have that much time till the season gets here.
Let's go back to the offensive side of the football and a position group that you brought up that, really it's been the conversation all week long, the lack of running backs in this room right now. Came into camp already thin. You lose Lenny Whitehead. You did add Lin-J Dixon, former Clemson Tigers running backs, had a cup of coffee over there at West Virginia. Not necessarily like what his ceiling could be in this offense, but just overall him getting in the room is big for Tennessee. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it is. It's funny that they needed a guy that was maybe a power back and could pass protect, and instead they've got a speed guy who's a third down back. Now that's fine. I think he's a talent. He obviously, showed some things at Clemson in his 4 years there, but he's the opposite of maybe what you would think they would get. Now, again, I'll use the word picky. That's being a little picky, because I think he could be a guy that could get into the rotation at some point. But it shows you that there's maybe a little bit of desperation, maybe just a time crunch. This late in the game, when you're in early August, you add who you can add, and it's a good piece that's available. This is Jabari Small's job. Jalen Wright, I think, is the guy that can make the biggest jump. I think we're looking at Justin Williams-Thomas, the freshman, and almost projecting that he's going to be this all-around back early. I could see that, but I could see that maybe taking half a season or most of his freshman season to get there. This isn't just carrying the ball, especially in this offense. You've got to pass protect. You've got to know this offense. And so to add a guy like Lin-J Dixon, I think his experience helps. If he picks up the offense, I think you could see him be a guy that fans will love to see, because he's probably going to break off a long run here and there, but not a guy that's going to put in a lot of reps overall.
We got some screaming going on in the background. Apologies there, but nonetheless, look at wide receiver. Cedric Tillman coming back is huge, and that's more than you had this time last year. However, Bru McCoy's got to get eligible. We know that. Jalen Hyatt, as we kind of penciled in there at the slot, still some question marks. You lost Velus Jones, very productive. Obviously, Javonte Payton didn't catch many balls, but he went for 6 when he did. What have you seen out of the wide receivers so far, and who's looked good for you so far in this camp?
I almost feel like we're discounting Ramel Keaton in the whole conversation, because if they started the season today, Ramel Keaton would be at that outside receiver opposite Cedric Tillman. And we can say, well, Keaton has been a role player for a while, hasn't been a guy that's, really had his time. But we can say the same thing for Cedric Tillman last year. Those two guys are not terribly dissimilar a year apart. So I think Keaton could be a guy that factors in there. I don't think if Bru McCoy is eligible, the job is necessarily going to be given to him. Jalen Hyatt, as you said, I would pencil in as a guy that's going to have a breakout season. Cedric Tillman's going to be good as long as he has help. That other position, I think, is up in the air. I think it's interesting that if you look back at Josh Heupel's offenses, last year at UCF and even back at Missouri, he usually only has 3 receivers that really produce. You think in an up-tempo offense, you would have to churn out a lot of guys and get a lot of reps, but that's not the case. He doesn't substitute much. So if you're in the top 3, you're going to get a lot of balls thrown to you. If you're the 4th, 5th guy, you're not going to get that much. So I think it puts a premium on making the right decision in camp to whittle it down to 3. Jimmy Callaway is the guy that, he can make a lot of plays, but obviously they haven't been terribly impressed with him. I think the competition between him and Squirrel White as that backup slot is interesting, because Squirrel is ascending and Jimmy Callaway is descending, I think, in the eyes of the coaches. So it's some urgency with Jimmy Callaway, because Squirrel White can do something with the ball when he gets it. So I'll be interested to see which one of those guys at the end of camp bumps up to number 2.
And a mid-state guy, Walker Merrill, who was primarily a slot last year, seeing him on the outside, I think that shows that they like the options of Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb, but not quite there yet. Need some depth on the outside.
Well, I'll say on Walker Merrill, he's a guy that's sort of a tweener, and if he can play on the outside, he'll get on the field quicker. Because I think one issue they've had is they've had more slots than outside guys. they've had a number of guys that can't get off press man coverage but can do something with the ball if they get it. And so if you can be a guy that can get off press man, you can be physical at the line of scrimmage, you're going to get on the field sooner than later. If Walker Merrill can show he can do that, then that'll be the case for him.
Last thing, we've spoke a little bit about the secondary. We've hit pretty much every level on offense. What about that front seven? You lose Matthew Butler, lose a couple of guys that played a lot of snaps for you and everything, but you return Jeremy Banks. Feel like you have more depth with Jawan Mitchell coming back and looking like he's healthy, more healthy now than he has been in 2 years. And then the front seven, a lot of veterans up there. I think that they will have the opportunity to be well rested and could be a pretty decent unit for Tennessee, which has struggled at times last year.
Yeah, I mean, at linebacker, it's a big if Jawan Mitchell is healthy. If he is healthy, it's a solid unit. Jeremy Banks is another guy that I think sometimes we sort of discount and say, well, a lot of tackles, some plays, but then the personal fouls, then the penalties, all these sort of things. Around the conference, Jeremy Banks is looked at as a premier linebacker.
Yeah.
And I think Tennessee fans, most of them do, but I think they need to see him through that filter and not necessarily see the penalties as sort of the top line on his bio.
And think about who he is now instead of who he was his freshman and sophomore year, getting in trouble off the field and everything. He's come back and, by all accounts, has kept out of trouble and been a good teammate.
Yeah, and he can be a factor in this defense because I think you have seen him grow year to year. I don't think he's a guy that's been stagnant or stale on the field. And on the front line, I mean, I think there's almost this abiding faith. Similar to wide receiver on offense, I think there's this abiding faith on defensive line that they'll find a guy will step up. Last year was Cedric Tillman at wide receiver, and it was Matthew Butler at defensive line. I think there's this thought that you did it last year. You took underutilized pieces and made them into all SEC NFL caliber players like Butler and like Tillman. So now the defensive line this year, there'll just be another Matthew Butler that pops up. I don't know who that'll be. I mean, Byron Young's going to be pretty good. Tyler Barron's going to be good, I think. But in the interior, there's like 5 or 6 different guys, and they're one for one in producing that type of guy. So I would think they'll find out who it is this year as well.
Adam Sparks, Knoxville News Sentinel. Thanks so much, man.
Good to be on.
Awesome stuff there from Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel. Big thank you to him for stopping by the show and always try to, I know this is the show that is primarily my voice, but I always try to get as many different voices as I possibly can to give you guys some different perspectives. I know you don't want to get, I know you probably get tired of listening to the same old stuff from me all the time. So always try to bring on some different voices when I can, just to give you guys maybe a different perspective from one of my colleagues on the beat. So big thanks to Adam Sparks, Knoxville News Sentinel. Big thanks to Ramon Foster, 104.5 The Zone, and of course the former Vol, and appreciate his friendship for jumping on the show. And a big thank you guys, as always, for making the show what it is. We will come back on Monday stronger than ever. Get ready for a new week at Tennessee football fall camp. Week 1 is almost in the books. I will tell you Monday all about what I saw from practice on Saturday and Sunday, anything big from over the weekend, as we continue to see how this Tennessee football team progresses through fall camp. This is Locked On Vols, your very first listen each and every day. Check out Locked On SEC. Make that your second listen after Locked On Vols every single day. And continue, please, to subscribe and follow us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Wherever you find your podcast, you'll find us. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please give me 5 stars and rate me. Give me a positive review. That would mean so much to me. Thank you so much to all you guys for making this what it is. Really do appreciate it. We'll come back next week stronger than ever. Same time, same place on Monday. Pull up a chair and hang out. Until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody.